On this Thursday, time reserved for Joe Kent of Grassroots Institute of Hawaii. And Joe, it's always good to see you. Good morning.
Good morning, Rick.
How you been?
Pretty good. I'm getting into the Christmas spirit.
Do you mean the spirit or the spirits?
Yeah, that's right. Yep. Getting ready for Thanksgiving and all of that. So love this time of year.
Do you have plans to travel this year?
No, it's a staycation with the family. And we want to, actually, I really like the snow, getting out to my other family in Minnesota. But this year, we're still here.
I had family in Eagan, Minnesota.
Oh, yeah? Oh, wow. Yeah. Great.
And I remember taking Amtrak from the city in Chicago and going up during a Christmas holiday. Man, first of all, there's a lake every 3 feet.
Yeah, that's right.
For some reason, the water's everywhere.
That's right.
But I had not experienced a cold as it was in Minnesota.
Yeah, it's so cold your accent changes. Yeah, sure, you betcha.
Yeah. And the further north you go,
that's right.
You get the Canadian influence. We have a lot of ground to cover. Please tell us about Grassroots Institute.
So the Grassroots Institute is a nonprofit research organization, and we try to dig up things that no one else is looking at. And we focus on individual liberty, economic freedom, and accountable government. So who could disagree with that?
Yeah, come on now. Sing out of the same hymnal. The late, great Dick Rowland, of course, at the very beginning, and now culminating under the leadership of Dr. Akina, and continued good work. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. I had the mayor on yesterday. I talked with him about Bill 6.
Oh, good.
And very supportive. And
wonderful.
Definitely a very positive step in assisting with permitting and regulations, et cetera. But Grassroots has been in the lead on this. I've read your public testimony and what's transpired in the council recently. Can you expand on status and what might be next?
Yeah, so Bill 6 passed the council, and it's sitting on the mayor's desk. I think he has until Monday to sign it or veto it, but it sounds like he's positive on it, so that's great. Basically, it would help clear the backlog of the permitting department, and that's a silver bullet of a policy if I've ever seen one, except the bullet only applies to certain projects. So it would allow people to skip the permitting department for certain affordable housing projects or DHHL projects or for certain commercial projects. Let's view it as an experiment. And if it does help clear out the backlog, then maybe they should expand it. Now, the problem is that some people say, well, if you can skip the permitting department and effectively self-certify your own permits, then, is the fox watching the hen house? Who is to make sure that these people are accountable? But the part of the bill is that there's an audit required, that the department spot checks everyone's permits, and let's say 20% of the permits, and if there's problems, then there's huge penalties. And so, like, you might lose your license, you might not be able to self-certify anymore, and so on.
Yeah.
And so this has been done for decades in New York, and many other states on the mainland allow the private sector to help out with the permitting. We're just the only ones doing it the backwards way, and that's why it takes so long, 6 months to a year in Hawaii.
What I understand is in places like New York, like Phoenix, like Chicago of all places, that there has been a reduction in streamlining, a reduction in the wait times that have been, like us, several months and down to literally days. It's just been that effective.
Yeah.
And the negativity that many claim is inevitable is not. But I'm glad the provision for severe consequence. It's just like mandatory drug testing.
Yeah.
You may not catch everyone doing drugs, but you're going to catch the ones that get caught.
Right. And okay, if we're worried about corruption, well, there's corruption now, we have corruption under the current system. So let's find a system that we can get permits through quicker, and hopefully the other counties can learn from this too.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Joe Kent with us, 8:45. What's the latest on the stadium?
Okay, so the Aloha Stadium is still up in the air. I think there was around $400 million that was appropriated for it, but it's getting stalled right now because of different visions about how the stadium should look. And keep in mind, there's also a question right now about whether we even need a stadium. This is sort of bubbling up on our social media anyways. I attended a UH football game last week, and against
big win.
Yeah, that was
Air Force.
Amazing win, unexpected, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I had to remark that there were only 75% of fans were in the audience, and I mean the audience was only 75% full. And so now remember, UH Ching Field recently built 15,000 seats there. And the reason they did that was to remain in the NCAA Division I status, which requires an average audience of 15,000 every other year. And so the problem is this year, our average attendance is 11,000 so far. And so, if the NCAA were to look at us this year, then they might say, but we still have next year. So if somehow UH can find, 15,000 attendees on average per game, then we'll get to keep our status. Now, the Aloha Stadium made that much easier because those games were well attended such that we achieved that status. But the capacity at Ching Field is lower, and that may be leading to a lower seat count, attendee count. Now, Ching is going to upgrade their seats to 17,000 by May of 2024. And so, maybe they'll be able to get more butts in the seats. But, what has happened on the mainland, apparently, a lot of colleges deal with this problem of trying to get fans in the seats so they can maintain their status. And some of them kind of cook their books a little bit to do so. They, broker deals with Pepsi, for example, and then sell them thousands of seats. Whether or not those seats are actually attended, at least on paper, they meet their requirement. I don't know if UH is going to have to do that, but nonetheless, the argument is that why do we need an Aloha Stadium if there is a way to maintain our status under the current seat capacity at Ching Field? So I'm sure there's arguments all over the place on this.
Would you like me to pose them now?
Please do, yeah.
First of all, we are Division I. I don't know if there's really going to be an actualized penalty by the NC2A given the conference realignments and all the disputes with Pac-2 with a recent court win. We're still in question as to whether or not we're going to be Mountain West. There's so much in the air. So the second part about it is that if you're going to be a Division I program, you have to be domiciled in a Division I location, and that is a stadium that is on par with other schools in your division and across the country. The reason why? Recruitment. If you're not able to recruit a good, solid team, then you don't have a hope of putting, quote unquote, the butts in the seats. We've been affected by NIL, by portal, and a lot of ancillary issues. And let's be honest, not many people from the windward side, from the west side, are going to come into town onto the Manoa campus and deal with the traffic, deal with the lack of parking, and the lack of fan amenities. And so the last part I'll make about this is that it can be emblematic for the entire state because football is one aspect. The other is, of course, the creation of that compound that has multi-use, multi-entertainment, revenue sources through housing, resorts, and more. So I think, it is UH football that is the home team, but there's so much more that goes with the stadium. The only other issue is we're scared pantless that it's going to be son of rail.
Right, exactly.
And what you're describing now, I mean, we're almost 3 years into the shuttering, the unexpected, uncommunicated shuttering that threw UH into this position of having
That's right. They had
where
to do
we
it.
are.
The Aloha Stadium was already supposed to be here. And so UH has had to scramble and get, excuse me, get its seat count up. But the seats are up, but the audience isn't there. And so anyway, it's a complicated issue.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'm just, again, fearful of this project. And you're right, the allocation of almost $400 million. Where's the money? What's going on?
It used to be $1 billion, and Josh Green cut it down to, $500 million. But, and also, if we're building a stadium that's so much smaller at around, 20,000 to 25,000 seats, that's not much more than the 17,000 seats that we already have. So anyway, I'm looking forward to further looking into this.
We're talking with Joe Kent. Can you help us explain Kauai in 1992?
Yeah.
I'll just stop there. Go right ahead.
Well, of course, what happened in Kauai in 1992? Of course, it was Hurricane Iniki. And there were thousands of homes that were destroyed then. The only reason I'm bringing that up now is because it parallels somewhat what happened in Lahaina. Now, the difference in Kauai, though, is they lifted the permitting rules. And so there were 2,000 homes that were rebuilt in Kauai after a couple years. And in Lahaina, there were 2,000 homes that were destroyed. So there's just really interesting parallels here. Of course, in Lahaina, there's major cleanup efforts and environmental questions and insurance questions and lawsuit questions. So all of that is stuck in the mire, and it's going to slow down the process. But when the community is ready to rebuild, will they suddenly face a mountain of regulations standing in their way, as is the case, for Hawaii? we know this already. And so we're just trying to look into what did they actually do on Kauai. So they lifted the permitting rules, and they said you can build your you can build your house. You don't need a permit. You just get the permits later. Mm-hmm. And so that's what they did. They all got the permits after the fact. Now, if they did that on Maui, that would help, but might be better if they actually loosened the rules permanently, not just in Lahaina, by the way. I mean, there needs to be housing all over Maui because there's families right now. I mean, we read the stories of families who are struggling. They just want to stay on Maui at this point, let alone Lahaina. So, but they can't find it. There is no place to rent. There's no place to buy for less than a regular price and an affordable price. And so a lot of families, I think, are moving away, and we're probably going to hear about that. It's hard to track that, actually, but I think thousands are probably going to move away soon.
I had a conversation with a friend on the Valley Isle yesterday, and that's exactly the focus. People are desperate. There are no alternatives. This couch surfing proposal of staying with other families in their own homes, I mean, that if you want to talk about doing a tap dance around the real issue. I've also understood that private developers have come in and said, I can bring you emergency housing.
Yes, that's right.
Look at all of this. It will fix an immediate need. No, I'm sorry. You don't have the right permits. You don't have the right infrastructure. You can't utilize that. I mean, come on now. The sense of urgency has gone.
That's right.
And it's...
It's an emergency, and on Kauai back in the 90s, they recognized that, and they changed things to make it easier. Back in the 90s, it actually only took 7 days to get a permit, by the way.
Wow. Geez, now the rate of inflation, now it's 7 months. So
yes, that's right. Yeah.
There we go. Not making light of it is a very serious issue, and delighted that Grassroot is immersed in this topic. Just want to make sure we have enough time because I'm going to bring up a 4-letter word. I'm going to have to put my finger on the red button. Rail. Now, we've had the disruption in service. Understand operationally things can happen. However, we now have contractors and Hart members that are saying the Dillingham relocation project ain't going that great.
That's right. That's
And
right.
Could you expand on that, please?
Well, the problem is that they found an archaeological historic property there. And they also found that the soil was contaminated by fuel. And so this is, Nan Inc. was hired to relocate the utilities there on Dillingham. And, they're 15% complete, but they were looking at the contract and saying, why do you have them scheduled to be paid so much later than the contract is actually due? It's due in December 2025. And so that's when they realized, well, this is going to be another delay. And that's all we've been hearing about rail. Now, of course, the reason I talk about this is we need to learn from our mistakes here. We've had delay after delay after delay. And here's another one. The Hart says that it's not going to change the ultimate deadline of March 2031, which seems so far from now. But if they were to change that date, it would be a big embarrassment, although there's embarrassment all over this project already. So we'll see what happens. But, one more thing to add to this is that HECO may not be able to complete their task. I mean, Hart is looking at the risks of what might happen, and they've identified that HECO might not be able to complete their portion of this task. I don't know if the reason for that is because HECO is distracted by many other things right now. And so it's interesting that the Lahaina situation may actually be affecting many other things in the state, including the rail. But we'll keep watching this. And it's a lesson, I think, for us to, when the rail is finally finished in 2031, let's just stop it, stop continuing it, because we keep hearing let's continue to Ala Moana, let's continue past Ala Moana, and so on. But when are we actually going to learn our lessons here? So we talked earlier about the stadium, and, beware of boondoggles.
So I understand what's transpired up until this point. I reconciled myself that it's institutional knowledge of the grave mistakes, delays, cost, questions about legalities, and financial payoffs. Okay. But moving forward, the microscope has got to be put into place. And the general public has to respond in kind, because this can only continue if the public is silent. And when I have Hart in on Fridays, we can delve into some of these details. Ironically, we haven't had a chance to visit for several weeks, and we're not going to be on together tomorrow or next week.
Oh, I see.
So the time of being able to Q&A and get specificity, that's been closing a little bit.
And I actually looked at the ridership, because remember it opened early in the spring or summer, and the ridership was great the first week, but after that it dropped off a cliff, such that the cost to actually operate the rail was about $50 per rider. But now we've looked at it again, and the city was saying that the ridership will go up. Don't worry, when school starts, it'll go up. Well, actually, it's gone down even more, such that now it's $60 per ticket. And so, we're running this rail not empty, but mostly empty anyways.
Yeah, and that is another dynamic, and the separation between Hart and DTS, design construction versus operation, there's got to be a melding. They cannot really continue to be mutually exclusive. However, the first part of our conversation bespeaks of exactly that, construction and build. And I think a lot of attention's got to be paid, and I hope the public responds. I can't thank you enough for the time.
Thank you. Yeah, it was great to be here. Yeah. And for anyone who wants to learn more, grassrootinstitute.org.
And there we have it. Joe Kent, thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks so much, Rick.